Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Need to Nerd podcast. I'm your host, Spencer. I'm a mythic level, top, like 500 mythic player in Constructed, but I'm joined by a man who has achieved top 4 mythic unlimited this month. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, put your hands together for West Singleton.
I'll be very lucky if I even get a participation trophy for this.
How's it going, West?
It's going well.
That's good.
Super excited to talk about what we're talking about tonight because I'm pretty sure by the time we're done, we're just going to go play it, and that'll be fun.
I was playing it before we started doing this, so.
See, I've succumbed to the wiles of Dragon Age Origins again for the first time in a minute, and I'm making good progress on that game.
Nice. Well, we are not going to talk about Dragon Age Origins. We're not going to talk about Magic the Gathering this week. This week we are going to give our first look into as I like to call it, the sandbox RPG survival game, Valheim. Before we get too far into the show, though, we have a couple of things to take care of. The first is our Nerd Fact of the Week. This week, 18 years ago, Kirby's Air Ride was released for the Nintendo GameCube.
That's true of every GameCube game right now.
Sure.
And is kind of awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Kirby's Air Ride is old enough to vote this week. And let me tell you, at least in the United States, in other countries it would have been able to do that for a while. But Kirby's Air Ride is one of those games that I never owned as a kid because I didn't own a GameCube, but it was just one that I would spend hours at my friend's house playing. Just hours, West.
Absolutely.
And when I saw this game was 18 years old, I was, I have to buy this. We have to review this game. I have to play it with my son and my wife. I'm going to buy some Wavebird-esque controllers because I have one of those Wiis that lets you play GameCube games. And I need to get this game and play it again.
Yeah, I if anything, just hanging out doing mini games sounds like a good time. Absolutely.
So, now that we've talked about Kirby's Air Ride and how great, a little nerd fact that is, that it's old enough to vote now, let's go to our housekeeping. You can join our Discord where you can see, talk about Smash Summit if depending on when this episode comes out, and if you're a Smash fan. It's funny, I don't play Melee, West, but Smash Summit Melee is just maybe my favorite esports event, period.
I've always really enjoyed watching it. I'm a fool for not having turned it on yet, but my attention's been pointed in another direction recently. And I love it when a video game is so worthy of my attention, I can play it without any other distraction. But I'm excited to go back and watch VODs of Summit. I think it's going to be really fun, and I assume I still have some time before top 8 anyways.
Oh, yeah, I mean, today, we are actually missing the obstacle course, which I'm going to have to go back and watch the VODs for.
Ooh, that one's legendary.
But they had their first ever 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and of course, HBox wins. HBox and his team take down the basketball tournament. HBox greater than Giannis, don't at me.
I mean, what doesn't actually surprise me is that the nerds who win the most in the video games also can win the most in sports.
Sure.
Because good mental fitness has stuff to do with physical fitness, and also a winning attitude. It's really all it takes, right?
If you want to talk about, nerdy basketball, nerd stuff in general, head on over to the Discord. Link will be in the show notes. Check it out. If you want to be our first patron ever, head over to patreon.com/EasyGameMedia. It means the world to us when that happens. And this show has grown quite a bit this year. As Wes, I don't know if I told you this, but did you know this show hit 50 episodes on the KOTOR episode?
Oh wow. That's a number of episodes. That's like a year's worth of episodes, very nearly, for us this week, then.
Oh, no, we were over a year a while back.
Well, not a year of recording as a
like
podcast,
a
but
year of episodes. Like this, I
yeah,
think this is episode 54
yeah. Like if you listen to our
podcast every week.
podcast every week, starting at the beginning, which you're only just hearing now, congratulations.
Yeah,
We've taken a year's worth of your podcast attention time.
exactly. So head on over if you want to support the show directly, head on over to patreon.com/easygamemedia. West, without further ado, I wish that I had a soundboard. I might install one for this podcast because I want to give you a drum roll to hype us up for the game Valheim. Take it away.
The image of Valheim I want to sell to each and every one of you is your character is on the prow of a ship, basically doing the Titanic thing, as your friend is cruising the ship along behind you. And you're wearing fancy gear, a good weapon. You've got a wolf fur cape around your neck. That is one of the most relaxing sights in all of Valheim, because the rest of it, quite frankly, is very exciting. But I do love my time on a boat. Valheim is
sitting around a bonfire, holding hands with your homies.
Valheim is life, because the whole point is for you to get to the point where everything else is taken care of, so you have time to just sit next to your homie and appreciate the sunset.
While he tries to fish and you push him off of the shrimp shack.
I did what I did. You're going to have to figure out ways to prank me in Valheim just as well, because I'm getting you without even trying.
Were you not trying?
There I was, but
okay.
the iron
it's way funnier if you just stood up from the chair and pushed me off and I was mad at you. That would have actually made my day.
No, the black metal incident, I was not remotely trying.
Oh, that was funny. That was funny. That was great. I'm purposely putting my black metal where you can't reach it. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be nice, make sure my black metal's somewhere where it's out of the way, and then I go to the portal. It's like you can't move, you can't go through it. I'm like, why? It's like you have 21 black metal on you. I was like, God dang it, West!
Where did this come from? For what it's worth, those tend to just pile up around our portals, and you'll pick some up on your way in, even if it has nothing to do with your buddy. And I absolutely don't plead that in this moment, because I'm definitely guilty of doing that.
I have to before we get too far into this, if you've hyped up this vision of this 2-player version of Valheim, how would you hype it up for those who want to get into it alone?
Oh, I mean, I would say it is that panic of what am I doing for shelter tonight as it begins to get dark. It's wondering how you're gonna what it is you need to beat, what it is you need to go find in order to get that next sweet item. It's how many hours did you spend planning your structure just to, on the day of, realize all you really need to do is actually go get more stone.
Can't build it yet. I need too much stone.
Valheim's a fantastically versatile game.
Well, let's actually get into that. What is Valheim to you?
So, Valheim definitely is a sandbox, in that you as the player character can make a lot of impact on the world around you, and it is an RPG in the sense of getting better gear and leveling up to be able to fight stronger foes. It's also a small little farming simulator. It's got a fishing mini game because it's a good game, but it's not the best fishing mini game. Unfortunately, they have. Valheim is absolutely a versatile game that keeps you going, because anytime you're ready for a new style of gameplay, it's got one for you. Whether you want to build, gather, fight, fail into having to fight.
Yeah, it's I said earlier that I think of it as a sandbox survival RPG, and I think that describes it pretty well. And I don't know that I realized how much I like the RPG elements until literally today. We're learning new skills.
You've been training, right?
Yeah, I have. Just different types of weapons, different skills. And I plan on doing that more, and making that a thing that I can easily do. And I've tried that in the past in the game. Finding a good place to swim, to learn swimming, or finding a good place to do stuff. But I kind of looked up some tips and tricks for leveling up, and it was really interesting. But I also didn't realize how much I'd like the survival aspect. Actually, you talk about the where are you going to sleep tonight, and
Yeah.
it's pretty often that I'll find a place to just quickly build a fireplace and a bed to go to sleep to continue my adventure if I'm not ready to go back to my base at
Yeah,
that
I
time.
think that the part of this game where like portals are not so commonplace that you can just always be traveling with a portal. That's absolutely one of the sweetest feelings, and it's definitely something that you'll do alone a lot more than you will with a friend, right? Like I think that when there's two people, it's really nice to be able to come and go and log in at different times, and portals are a huge thing. Solo play, I could imagine doing a lot less with portals.
Yeah, I really enjoy the adventuring aspect of this game, and I think that when I look at Valheim, I kind of look at it as this. I said this fun, a little behind the curtains. We actually already recorded this episode and it got lost.
Classic.
Um, but I said on the first recording of this episode about a tweet that I had seen that was like, I just finished my job so that I can go do chores in my video game so that I can avoid my chores in real life. And I was like, yeah, I'm in this tweet. Like, this is this is me in Valheim. Like,
Yeah.
I really don't want to do the dishes right now. I've got to go feed my pigs.
I mean, I know people play WoW the same way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, doing like very dink and dunk like world quests or dailies that mean nothing. But over time accrue value is also a thing that people are very much into. But yeah, this one it's like you're actually doing the back-breaking work part of chores. It's just your character is super buff and only has to eat bread to become very, very tenacious.
So let's talk about our experience, kind of in this vein of genres that this game is. And I'll go first. I think that there are kind of a mix of games for me. The biggest sandbox game that analog that I've ever played for this was probably Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
It's probably my top 10 favorite video games of all time. There are a lot of things that Breath of the Wild does better. Traveling across and traversing your map is probably the biggest.
Yeah.
Whereas the crafting and weapon system, is substantially worse in my opinion in Breath of the Wild. And then the only real analog I have to like these building survival games is actually Sims. I played a lot of Sims Busting Out on the Xbox, which isn't the greatest analog because that one actually has like a story that you follow. But I did play regular Sims or stuff like that on the PC as a kid. What about you? What are kind of your analogs before getting into this game?
Well, I think that Valheim's proper analog is Minecraft. This is adult Viking Minecraft, and the adult and Viking part should really be enough to sell you because Minecraft's actually great as it is. My time playing Minecraft, started in early middle school. Really right at the beginning, right? I realize it's a very middle school thing to do, but this was when Minecraft wasn't a very anything to do. This was like during its earliest stages of existence, but it always had that thing. And Valheim, quite frankly, has a similarity to Minecraft that's important in that we're only seeing this game's earliest distinctions. We're going to talk a bit later in the episode about some of the upcoming updates.
Yeah, I think it's more to know that like we were going to do this as a review episode, but I didn't feel like that was fair. We'll get into the updates, but like this game has a lot to grow.
Yeah.
I want to quickly highlight that Breath of the Wild might be your favorite game of all time.
That's hard.
It's like got to be that or like a Pokemon game, right?
It's Pokemon Crystal, but
Okay. Okay, I mean it's top 3 of your favorite games, right? Like if it's
not really a question.
Yeah. I didn't realize so is like Emerald number 2 and
honestly I can't just go back and replay a Gen 3 game today the same way I can a Gen 2 game.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not like Emerald's great, but the thing that's exciting about Emerald is the end game.
Sure.
And so just like a repeat of Emerald is not worth anything to me.
That's so funny. This obviously isn't a Pokemon podcast, but I actually hate replaying Gen 2 games because of the really low level Pokemon throughout the world, and it makes grinding so hard because I like to have really high level Pokemon as I go into the Elite Four, and you just like end up with like level 40 Pokemon in the Elite Four in Gen 2.
That's the level of the Elite Four in Gen 2.
I understand. Like, I'm just saying that like it's just really slow progression and a lot of walking.
It is all of those things. I agree. You should be biking for all of it. Really,
Sure.
It's the biking game by a lot.
Oh man, we gotta do a Pokemon hot takes episode one of these days. But no, I think that you've played more analogs to this game. Like you've played Minecraft, you've played Breath of the Wild. You love Stardew Valley.
Yeah, I'm entertained by that game, and it's funny, the things that Stardew Valley has in common with this game are
things that Valheim are bad
half
at.
Of it. Well, and it's not Valheim's strengths, but also I was going to say the things that I love about Stardew Valley are actually more connected with the things it has in common with like a Fire Emblem Three Houses.
Sure.
Than I
actually think that would be a cool addition to this game for what it's worth is NPCs.
Yeah. I think that the fact that you hate the one NPC the game has is kind of rough for you, buddy. But I like the bird. We didn't mention that at all in our Lost episode, and that bird's definitely worth mentioning.
Well, let's look at the mechanics really quick. We spent a lot of time on the mechanic in the previous version of the episode, but I think we can. I'm actually going to let you kick off each of these.
Sure.
Oh, you added to the show notes since then, though.
I sure did.
Well, let's start with building. Talk to us about the building mechanics of this game.
Yeah, so Valheim is one of those games that has it's a great like Lincoln Log style of building where like you have these basic pieces that you can repeat over and over again in ways that result in cool buildings.
Do you know
variation of them is the most important part.
Do you know what connects are?
Yeah.
I think that it's more like Connects and Lincoln Logs did a fusion dance.
It's true that it is Connects that look like Lincoln Logs.
Yeah, it's like that almost.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like figuring out where to snap things together
is
part of building.
Yeah.
And like you build your frames before you fill it in. But like Valheim has an awesome, building element to it where I think certainly a lot of the time I spend in the game, I'm thinking about the nature of it as like a game for building, because like I'm always about like having the cool house or whatever, and I'm having like ideas pop into my head right now of like what would be a sweet house. So I'm that's one of the exciting elements to me is these houses are your design, and people go big in this game. There are awesome videos of people who've made humongous castles. There's a Taj Mahal.
I saw a 3-hour video for a mead house, this dude had built an entire Viking village, and he's like, "Here's what my mead house looks like." I'm like, "This is crazy."
Yeah, I think it's really cool what people can do in this game.
The next thing that I want to do when we both get in, for example, is I want to build a boathouse. I've been building like kind of interesting docks, but I saw this video of like basically building a straight up a boathouse for your boat that's a little bit separate, and I was like, I need this. This solves so many of my problems that I have with a dock that like.
Oh, see, this solves none of my problems because you know what I want to do with a boat?
Crash it into the shore and jump off.
In a very exciting way, like lightsaber pulled out, like that sort of experience, like the crash landing on the starship of the like in episode 3 or whatever. Where, like,
when they
like
spin into the
hangar and, like,
this
jump
describes your landing of boats perfectly. I think that it's funny because like there are interesting parts of building to me that I didn't really find as interesting to start with, but have started to grow on me. Whether it's fortifying my base, whether it's understanding the aesthetic look that you can kind of try and achieve in different areas, and that kind of comes in the late game. But I think that even the early game building, like even trying to build your first house that stores your stuff.
One of the important things to note about the first house you're building that stores your stuff is you have to figure out how to defend it as well, which is awesome, and like that's something that's exciting to experiment in the game as well.
Yeah, there's levels of building that happen in the game, right? Where as you gain materials, it changes what you can build,
Yeah.
and it also might change where you want to build, right? Like, go ahead.
I was just thinking about how, like, what if, like, part of building your next thing in Valheim is, like, you always liquidate whatever it is you already had, and that's a lot of the resources you're going to be pulling forward, and it's whatever it was to get you to that next level of why you're building a new base. But that, or you can just leave them up always, but it's just like a good way to reclaim wood was what I was thinking of with your new bases.
It certainly is a good way to reclaim wood, but you use a lot less wood on your stone base than before.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, because we actually used a ton of wood in our second stone base.
But most of it was core wood.
It was actually a huge variety. Wood went into everything.
Yeah, it's true. That base looks sweet though. Anyway, it's funny. We could probably go off on building for a long time, and we'll get into why in the final segment of the mechanics. The next thing that we should talk about is crafting. Why don't you talk about crafting for us and kind of all that it encompasses in Valheim?
Yeah, so crafting is the default reason for the other remaining modes of the game. It's what gets you out adventuring because you're trying to acquire the resources, and the sweeter resources in the game are all in environments where you get harassed by mobs on a regular basis, and some of them are harder than others. But it's after you've done all of that that you come back to your base, you review what you managed to pick up, you walk up to your crafting station, and you ask, what new can I build? What new recipe can I make? What better food do I have access to now? Or is there anything I can plant? Those are all questions that you're asking yourself a lot as part of the crafting of this game, the way to turn the resources you have into other resources that you will use in the game.
Yeah, crafting is interesting. We brought up Breath of the Wild, right, where most of the crafting that you do in that game is just straight up recipes for potions and food. And that is definitely a thing in this game, but you also craft your weapons in this game. You also craft...
Progression along that axis specifically, I think, is like the major motivator of the whole game. The reason you're doing the next thing is always to be able to gain access to a better metal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing dungeons runs right now so that I can build my, enough forges to keep up with my own personal demands. And, that's really cool.
Yeah.
But also, the different types of things that you need to craft different things is really interesting. Whether it's, you might not need a ton of stone to start the game, but all of a sudden you need stone to build a kiln, and you're like, I have this lying around, I guess, if you've saved it, but if you didn't know to save it, you actually then have to go look for stone, because all you've used it for is to build stone weapons before this.
Yeah. It's true. There's a lot of items that at various points in the game I was like, well, this is my least valuable thing. I can expend this now.
Dude, straight up, I've been complaining about bone fragments for the last 2 months we've been playing this game.
Such good upgrades when you're at the beginning of the
they're
game.
so important at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, because skeletons are kind of hard at the beginning of the game, Spencer.
Yeah, it's too funny. Is there anything that we kind of missed on crafting? I think a lot of it's covered in adventuring, the stuff that we would have talked about here. So should we move on to that?
Yeah, I think that crafting is just it's one of the best rewards the game has. It's the reason that you're doing a lot of what else the game has to offer. And so whenever it comes up and is relevant, it makes the game feel worthwhile and real.
Yeah, the first time eating sea serpent stew makes all those times you died to a sea serpent worth it.
For sure. Speaking of fighting a sea serpent,
let's talk about adventuring.
Oh, we're skipping over. Yes, well, let's talk about the reason you might have to stop adventuring while you're on the high seas.
You want
the adventure we were doing.
Well, let's talk about adventuring, because I think this encompasses the hunter-gatherer aspect of the game, the exploration aspect of the game, as well as the I don't know that chore is the right, like, I think hunter gatherer kind of covers that, but also there are times where you'll be adventuring for a different reason than hunter gatherer, right? Where like
Yeah, you're trying to find some new location, or you're
like you have a quest, like
yeah.
like, all right, the game is really good at putting the first boss in front of you really fast, like,
But the ones after that take a while to go find.
yeah, and so you know that a biome has a boss. Like, it's very clear to you pretty early, and if you didn't pick up on that and you played the game and you didn't know what to do after you beat it clear, every biome has a boss except for the last 3 that haven't created them yet.
Yeah.
So part of that is going to be what is next for me, because I've reached to the point where I can build anything I want that I have access to right now, but there are more places, and I don't know what I need to access the things in these places or the things around these places, and those are the kind of the 3 components, I guess, is access to more things, hunter gatherer, and what was the third one I said?
Access, fighting.
Sure,
Or,
fighting. Exploring. I said exploring.
Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah.
Exploring, because it is important to like how do you even know how many biomes there are? Like in the seed that we have played the most of, which I think is my Heezy World seed. I assume that we both have the most time in that seed over our solo seeds.
My days in that seed have definitely overtaken the days in my previous one.
And we still are missing a biome.
True.
Like, we still
sailed to the corner of the world in one side.
Yeah, we literally have gone off the edge of the earth and still have not found one of the biomes.
But they are... The thing to note about those is that those are empty biomes, and those are coming in later releases for this game, but they're still really cool, and it'll be fascinating to have them be activated in a fashion where previously maybe they weren't an issue, or they didn't even register. Where soon it's going to be like, oh yeah, I want to go in there.
Talk to me about combat in this game, because one of the games that we didn't mention as an analog that I'd like to bring up now, for me, is probably Star Wars Fallen Order, which is an analog to Dark Souls as far as combat goes.
Yeah, a little bit of that third-person character mobility fighting style for sure is a big part of the game.
Yeah, and as I've actually been working in my dojo recently, I've learned that there are different weapons have different reasons that you would use them in different combat situations. I already knew that with bows and melee weapons.
Yeah.
But one of the things, for example, that I've been leveling up is knives. And, for example, knives in this game get a 50% bonus on crits and on damage or something when you attack something from behind. So, it's gives you a real reason where Trollhide armor would be really good.
For, sneaking.
Yeah.
I see. So, that's the element of being a rogue that we never really saw.
Yeah, knives and bows are just, that's a real... And for somebody like West, who actually really loved doing Trollhide armor... if he had just straight up just stayed in Trollhide armor and practiced sneaking and the leveling aspect of this game, it's hard to... One of the things about this game
that
we haven't...
That's a good thing to go try is actually something that I should go work at. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
One of the things that, as we get into leveling, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but you don't know what you don't know in this game, and there is not a lot of handrails. There's some...
The game's tutorial system is an NPC Spencer refuses to talk to.
He doesn't give you this kind of useful information, though.
No, because he's absolutely the I don't care what your experience is. You're here today. Congrats.
He's the worst is he doesn't tell you how to progress. He tells you how you progressed. He's like, oh, you built a forge. Here's what you can do with a forge.
Yeah,
It's this is so useless.
Because, one of the,
I just had to click on this forge to know this.
Anytime you're progressing towards being able to build something, Valheim usually has it as something that you can craft. And if you're notice oh, there's a new thing I've crafted because I've interacted with the pieces for it now.
Then he shows up to tell you that you have this thing that you've crafted, and you're like, I already did it. This is pointless. We'll get into this in could be betters.
Oh my goodness, this is a love it for me now.
I'm playing a new world, so he's back where I have not
Yeah.
seen him in years.
Let's go, Ugin.
So the combat, just kind of roll back to that, is it's kind of sophisticated, more so than I thought it was, because I just basically fought with axes and swords and clubs, and just was like, hit the thing in front of me, block when I need to block. That's it. But I actually think it's substantially more strategic, especially as when you get to the end game where you can't really get gear good enough to make
the enemies in the late game
truly a breeze.
Silly.
Yeah. And so because of that, you end up having to work on things like,
tactics or
being more tactical, as well as having multiple skills. Like, I need to be able to shoot a bow, and I need to be able to, use a melee weapon. I need to be able to block, and I need to be able to sneak.
Now that you mention it, Spencer, my brain keeps going back to this style of like sneaking and shooting and stuff, and like that's actually how I like to fight anyways. Like I actually really like running backwards with a bow in hand as like a fighting tactic in Valheim.
Yeah, no, I do too. The funny thing about Valheim is that there are so many rewards, and one of the things that I'm doing in this dojo. I'll just explain the dojo now for how it works. I was going to add tips and tricks to the podcast. If you could put that just after could be betters for me while I talk about this, that'd be great. But one of the things that is really cool is if you start the game and you find a really big rock, this will be the first tip and trick. You can actually do almost all of your combat against that rock. So if you actually build that rock inside of a base with a bed, a fireplace next to it, you will get a rested bonus and a comfort bonus at the same time, which is a 400% increase to your stamina regen, which lets you do all of your combat stuff, whether it's knives, whether it's swords, whether it's clubs, whether it's axes, whatever it is, you can actually do it right there. And so, with this new character that I've built, I've been trying different things. I've been trying knives. I've been trying. I also went into my other server and was like, hey, I'm pretty sure I have some random weapons just sitting in these boxes. I can train with these to see if there's any that I want to focus on. One of them was the Siege Breaker. Really quickly, you cannot use the Siege Breaker in a dojo. I don't know if anyone have you used it, by the way, West?
Is it gonna break rocks?
So it doesn't break the rock, but it damages everything around it.
In like a really big way.
If you hit the rock, the wood in your house gets broken, so you can't.
That's sick, actually.
Yeah, so
there's fighting where I would love that effect, actually.
Yeah, there is. No, absolutely. So there's the combat is a little bit more in depth, and I think the training and the leveling aspect of this game is a little underutilized for what West and I have done so far.
Yeah, that does sound actually very exciting. And brings us to the last kind of mechanic of the game, of course, is this leveling system where everything that a character can do in the game, run, jump, swim, block, swing a sword, fire an arrow, has an associated skill with it. And it's very simple. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I've changed my mind in the last 24 hours since we did the last podcast, because I woke up sick today and, just kind of played Valheim on and off today. I think I've changed my opinion on the leveling system. I originally hated it. I thought it was bad. And I don't know that I hate it. I think that I have a could be better for it now, whereas I don't hate it as much.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to note that I think that players are not told how much time they should spend doing this thing.
That's an interesting point, but I think that one of the things about Valheim is that it is absolutely as deep as you want it to be, and it's actually not more fun when it's any deeper than you want it to be at that moment.
You don't have to spend time leveling if you don't want to. If you don't want to find a place to up swimming, don't do it. But I think that you can expect frustrations the second that, we just had the other day, had West trying to grab the front of the ship like he talked about during the hype moment, and he fell off the ship and was very concerned that he was not going to make it back to the ship and was going to die in the open.
Worried.
That's not true. You're just lying. You said, I'm going to die. I hate this so much.
I had a plan.
Your plan was for me to stop?
I had a health potion. Eat some food.
But it's there. It is funny because like the leveling is something so in your face. Like you get notified every time you level a skill, and that your character
absolutely ignorable
glows, and you like it's not, you're not told where to find it, and we'll talk about.
That's actually probably a really good point, because what I realize now is that this game has an analog for its experience system. It's RuneScape.
I've never played RuneScape.
Oh, RuneScape is all about pursuing that 99th level in like chopping trees.
I straight up don't even know what the max level is in Valheim.
If my guess, which is it's RuneScape inspired, which it could very well be considering the system, I'm thinking about it now.
There's no chance it's 99.
I think it's like 100, and it's probably... How high have you gotten on a skill so far, Spencer?
I was gonna say there's no chance the sword isn't my highest skill, and it's got to be in like the 30s.
Yeah, it takes an insane amount of experience in RuneScape to hit level 99. Like it's like spending hours just doing that thing.
I've done that.
I know Valheim, I think, actually is delivers a RPG experience very similar to RuneScape in that
That's really
regard.
funny. That's funny, especially because while I've never played RuneScape, I know that it was considered one of the best RPGs of all time. So, for a lot of people,
friends who still play it to this day.
Yeah. I think the leveling system is interesting. I have a couple of good betters that we'll get into later. Let's actually rank these as far as what they do the best.
Yeah.
I think you and I are both gonna put building at 1.
Yeah. So we can go back to the bottom. What do you think is the mechanic this game like doesn't execute on the best?
I currently think it's actually partially the adventuring, and that is just the movement is not as great as you could want it to be. So there are a couple of examples of this. Transferring.
I was gonna just say no hover ability, like no paraglider.
That would be
the
cool.
Number one mechanic of exploration period is
Sure.
so good.
No, actually, to cover on that, one of my favorite games of all time is pretty biased, because when you play the game Elder Scrolls 3, there's a moment at the very, very beginning of the game where this person drops from the sky and he has potions of flight they don't work. This is and the very first time that I played the Game of the Year edition of Morrowind, there is a super rare item that he will have on his body, which is a robe of flight.
Okay.
Where if you just equip it, you can just hover and fly.
Sure.
In the game. And I've never found it again. But it definitely made traveling across this very large map easier and more fun.
Yeah.
So I do think that there are things that they could do to improve it. Here's the thing: when you get Epona, it's better. When you get the running shoes improved Fire Red, Leaf Green, an unreal amount. And while using your running and jumping skills are great in Valheim, there needs to be improvements to the. I mean, the biomes are so different. There's so much. You also can't teleport with certain items. So like. It's fine. Here's the thing, in my opinion, if I've gotten to the point where I'm getting iron, you don't need to make me not be able to teleport with iron. Like, I'm clearly invested in your game. And so for that reason, I think adventuring has some. It's not even don't let me teleport with iron, but it's like don't make it a grueling experience to move bases or things like that. I don't know.
I think that. Also, there is terrible because a lot of what Valheim does is outside of making. I mean, like if building was gated, that would be so much worse. So like, For the most part,
they only
things that are
gate travel.
supposed to feel somewhat realistic do, and the part where you can only carry so much over land, or you can
Right, but then
put it all on a boat, feels very real.
don't make my cart completely useless on half the map.
The cart's clearly for the well-prepared in real life too. Like, you know, carts suck without roads. The world doesn't have any roads to begin with.
Yeah, I've already started making roads in my new world. I feel you, bud.
Yeah, we've never had infrastructure day in Valheim.
Yeah,
we've had building days. We've never had infrastructure day.
But yeah, that's adventuring would be my bottom right now.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it's also my favorite part. Like hunter gatherer is my favorite part of the game.
It's the thing you feel could be most improved. Like the thing that, like, if it was better in these ways, it would go from being your like favorite part of the game to the reason this is like your favorite game ever.
Oh man, it would be really hard for Valheim to beat out my favorite games ever.
Just solidly lodge itself in that distinction.
Yeah, I think that Valheim has a lot of potential to be a top 10 game for me, and I do think that like quality of life improvements are like the thing that this game needs.
Sure, I believe it.
I would say that the next worst is combat to me. It's pretty close between that and leveling, but I think leveling has jumped up for me when I understood it more.
Sure. I mean, I'm gonna have the Switch idea with you on that one, because I'm pretty sure that combat is the thing that I that Valheim does as well as it needs to for me, more than other things, I think, in a lot of ways. I don't know if I like need it to be improved a ton. I don't know if games that have better combat systems bring any extra meaning to me. I don't really like complicated combat.
That's actually super interesting, because I was not a fan. Combat systems are interesting, right? You know, we look at you know, other games, right? You have D&D, right? Just straight up, I get to decide what I'm doing in this combat. I have a certain amount of movement.
Yeah.
And there are analogs to that in video games. KOTOR and straight up D&D video games
are the game I'm playing right now. Dragon Age Origins.
There are lots of RPGs that are just straight up D20 combat systems.
Or very similar in other ways, absolutely.
Whereas you have games like you have games that have very different styles of combat. I mean, I'll just hold this up for the video viewers, but like Mass Effect kind of changed my opinion on combat systems.
Sure.
Where I was a huge turn-based fan. I just thought turn-based combat was the best way to do combat.
Yeah.
And after playing
Mass Effect, one of those ones that you can pause at any time mid-fight, give everyone directions, and then go back to things happening.
That is KOTOR. So Mass Effect, you only get to play as the one player.
Oh, okay. Got it.
It kind of takes the story elements of KOTOR, but then has a completely different style of combat.
Got it.
I actually think that if they remade KOTOR and they took Mass Effect's combat and mixed it with Jedi Fallen Order's combat, it would be the greatest combat system that you could have. You're like, I have played neither of those games. They're both.
Nope.
They're both.
I'm pretty sure the Star Wars video game I played the most of is Lego Star Wars, Spencer. I'm sorry.
That's what I've been playing. Like I put more hours into Lego Star Wars than Valheim this month.
It's another great way to participate in a story.
Well, Maxwell wanted to play video games with me, and it's one of those games that we can play together. So.
Yeah, makes sense.
But I think that the combat in Valheim is lacking to me. I agree with what you're saying, that it gives you what you need, but it has a lot of room to improve, even with what it has now.
Sure, there's no doubt about that in this game. That is what this game is about, right? Like there's no system that Valheim's like, we think is perfect, let's go.
Yeah. Would you agree that crafting is the second best part of this game?
It's so central, right?
Yeah.
It's the thing that makes me excited for all the other things, because I want to go try out that new thing I have, or that new thing I can build, or that new idea I've had, or just I have a lot of this resource laying around. But the crafting system definitely is very fun, as your classic, like, resources go from being kind of rare to abundant to kind of rare because you used them all.
Dude, can I just straight up say, if they added some of the goblin items to the crafting system and the building system, where like I get to like if I could just build with bones and deer hide and resin, like that'd be so sweet. Like building like towers of bones would be so cool.
Yeah, it would be sweet to be able to learn the goblin crafting system.
Yeah. Hey,
It would make destroying those bases a lot more efficient.
I mean, I think deer hide is still pretty valuable in this game. Like almost the entire time, I think it's one of the mechanics, one of the items.
It's always part of boat sales. That sort of thing. Yeah,
stuff like that. Should we talk about what's coming?
Heck yeah.
Why don't you talk about really quickly before we actually do this? This game had plans before COVID, and COVID happens. That impacts video games as a whole. But we actually do have a tentative release schedule of what the next 4 expansions will look like, but we've already actually seen things outside of these expansions be introduced to the game.
Yeah.
But we actually do know the first expansion is coming out in the next 2 to 3 months. Or tomorrow. It could literally drop tomorrow. We don't know.
It's felt that way for a while now, so like I'm playing the Valheim I got right now, not necessarily the Valheim I'm expecting to have.
So Wes, what are the next 4 expansions or 4 major releases?
We're getting Hearth and Home, which is going to be all about making your world not adventuring more pleasant, and maybe a horse, so maybe that'll help adventuring too. If you're Spencer, I always lose horses in video games, so I'm really not a horse guy in video games.
Fun fact, I'm just a horse guy in real life. If there was one thing that I could own in this world, it would be a horse ranch. Like if I was just like a billionaire who never had to work again, I would just have a horse ranch. That's just the thing I would own.
Yeah, that would be something that if my family was that rich, they would own as well, because my mother's very much into horses, has been her whole life. But after that, we've got the Cult of the Wolf, which is gonna, I know nothing about it, but wolves are already sweet in this game, and I bet they could get sweeter. There's I don't know if I want to spoil it, but there are like interesting mountain denizens other than wolves that also are intriguing with the theme of this update. Then we have Ships in the Sea, which is going to be about adding life to the seas of Valheim, and
it needs it, dude. It needs it.
I mean, I can't wait to become a master boatsman in Valheim, only for them to change the mechanics enough that I feel like I have to learn something. That'll be great.
It's funny too, because I want
to jump a boat.
There is opinions that you are less likely to see a monster unless there are 2 people on your boat. And the reason for that is that you need a person to manage your harpoon, so they didn't want to put you on a boat with a harpoon and not be able to steer the boat and harpoon the sea monster. But I have actually never seen a sea monster on the Heezy world
sailing around with me.
Sailing around without you.
Oh, yeah. We've only encountered like 4 or something in all of our time just playing together, but...
Oh, you know what? You just remind me, there was one time that I did encounter a sea monster without you.
I mean, I've encountered sea monsters in my own solo play, so it definitely happens.
Yeah. But yeah, that one's exciting. And then the last update is Mistlands. It's the name of the update, which is a biome that we already know exists.
Yes, but has nothing in it right now, so that'll be bringing that biome on live.
It's so crazy too, because like Ashlands actually has stuff in it.
But things that already existed within the game that could just be moved to that biome as a further part of it.
Yeah. It is said that the Mistlands are uninhabitable, regardless of what happens to that biome. So I don't think you'll actually be able to build very well in there.
That makes sense. I mean, the whole thing looks like Spiderland.
Yeah, it's pretty scary looking.
Yeah. I'm hoping for a Spider Queen boss, because that's an awesome boss fight in any video game.
Absolutely. I completely agree. The Lord of the Rings movies on Xbox, fighting Shelob is always great. What do we know about these games? About these updates. So the first thing that we know is we're going to get onions in Hearth and Home. We're going to have some kind of update with birds of some kind, whether that's keeping birds or ravens being added to the game as a separate thing over.
A different bird that talks to you.
Shut up. And then we
I want a
also
seagull.
are hinted at horses existing, which would solve one of my major things. And then also we do know that we will get new build type, like building. We don't know if it's going to be new items that give you new building materials. I think the most likely thing, and I said this on the podcast that we lost, I think you're going to be able to use obsidian to build new roofs, to like build shingles or something like that.
Speaking of glass, I'd love some not volcanic glass for the purposes of windows in the game as well.
I think that obsidian might build windows too, for what it's worth.
Yeah,
would
very
be my
dark
guess.
tinted windows.
I mean, what do you want? You're in Viking. When was glass invented, West?
Glass was invented whenever someone had heat to melt metal and decided to put sand in instead.
I actually should know this because it was part of something that I looked into the other day. 3600 BC was the invention of glass, but that was not worldwide. It was only in Egypt.
Yeah, and Egypt was the center of all commerce in that part of the world for pretty much its entire existence.
Right, but the Vikings and the Egyptians didn't have anything to do with each other.
But the Viking nations didn't existed long enough for that technology to literally travel worldwide. Human beings in there just were not real civilization centers in that northern part of the world.
I actually thought the Vikings started in BC times. They started.
I'm sure people have been there, but
apparently Norwegian Sea, Baltic Sea people started exploring around 800 AD, or slightly before that.
Okay, well, glass definitely traveled its way up the coast in that time.
Yeah, we definitely should have glass in this game.
I mean, a kiln is all you need to make glass.
It's true. Well, yes. I don't know that you're making great glass. You're not making great glass, but yeah, that's true.
But you just need sand and a lot of heat, and you put
it's so funny too. There's definitely tons of resources that this game could add. But yeah, those are the things that we know about in Hearth and Home. We know we're going to get new building materials, specifically roofs. There's actually only one roof type in a thatched roof. We know we're getting a new roof. I would suspect, just from building materials available to us, the obsidian gets more things that you can do with it. I would not be surprised if bone got more things you could do with it in the mid game. Just because you should be able to build with bone more than you do in this game.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any other guesses that I would have. Is there any other guesses you would have? I guess crystal is the last one that I would guess because you can do nothing with it. So maybe that's straight up the glass that you're thinking.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. Looks like we're fighting more of those stone golems atop mountains in the future.
I don't know, man. I have a lot of crystal lying around.
But that's how this game goes. A resource goes from being abundant because you don't have enough ways to use it to all of a sudden it's part of everything, or at least part of stuff I use all the time now.
It's so funny. The other day, as I was building my room, I realized that I really wanted those green lanterns, and I was like, I have to go guck hunting for these? That's so rough. So
that's definitely one thing that we never did a good enough job of grabbing.
We didn't grab any guck. We just we only went to the swamp for one reason. What are you hoping for in these updates that we haven't mentioned?
Sweet Mistlin's boss, spider themed, because I think they've already that's they're a bit heavy handed on that one, anyways. I think they'd be failing to deliver on an expectation.
It will have a spider. I think it will have a spider. Maybe it won't have a spider boss, but there will be giant spider. Yeah, there will be giant spiders to fight in that.
But I think that there's a lot to hope for in these games. I'd love to have other things in the ocean that are either resources we need or fighting those turtles that you can encounter. I want more of that in Ships in the Sea. I want to be able to do something with these island creatures.
Yeah, I think that there are a couple of updates for me. I would like to be able to build a fish farm. is like probably my number one thing in Hearth and Home that hasn't been talked about.
Hmm.
It's pretty. So like, I'd love to be able to catch a fish or two.
Yeah.
And use it rather than having dead fish, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
I think that would be pretty great for this game. Especially, it would really make you care about how you build your bases in different ways. Because currently, like, I can build a base in the mountains, I can build a base in any biome, and it doesn't matter. But if you want the most effective base, you want it to be near enough biomes to maximize your resources.
Yeah.
And I think that making you build it near water would be pretty cool.
Makes sense to me.
The other things that I care about the most in the update are, I've already mentioned travel updates. Whether it is just giving me a horse, like,
yeah,
that definitely existed at this time for thousands of years. I feel like we should have those. And then also the building, while is the best part of this game, is super janky. I'd like it would just not be that hard to give me straight up circles that I could build in stone or in wood or in, even if I have to build something to make circular objects for building, which do have to exist, right? In order to bend wood, you have to have a machine that bends the wood for you. I'd be fine having to build that, finding the materials to do it, but I should be able to do it.
Yeah, that would be fascinating to see the carpenter aspect of
it's
Valheim go to that insane level of detail. I think that'd be really funny.
Yeah, and we'll get into this in one of my love-its, which will come up here shortly. And then my last want for these is clarity on a couple things. I love how much I had to learn on my own in Valheim, but like, I don't know how to find. Oh, sorry. One last thing. I want to be able to breed locks. I think that the fact that I can tame locks and not breed them is really stupid.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that my big one of my, I don't know if that's even a gripe. Like, I don't know that I have a problem with this, but I don't like that I don't know what causes a level 1 or level 2 thing to appear. In my game just now, in my very first dungeon, I fought a level 2 skeleton, and it's like, what the heck? Like,
I feel like I did that.
It wasn't even
point in my dungeons.
It wasn't even like a big dungeon. Like, there was literally only 3 rooms.
Yeah. I have no idea what the system is on preparing that.
I spent hours having a level 2 pig follow me home. Like, yeah. I missed a family party because I saw a level 2 pig.
And you couldn't pass it up.
And I was like, Devonair, you have to go without me. I actually cannot. Like,
that is hilarious.
You know what? It's not hilarious, though. It makes me feel bad about myself as, like, a human being.
Oh, I mean, sure. That's fair. I do think that it is super interesting how much it sucks us in.
It is. I understand that, like, you, as a marketing director of this game, don't want this information out, or whether, not even just marketing, but like, you're building this game, but you're building it in a way where you're hurting people's lives, and that is really upsetting to me, and I would like that to change. Like, I would like, if I have iron level armor and I'm in the meadows, I just want to see level 1 and level 2 things.
Yeah.
I don't even know that's not hard to implement. But yeah. Should we go to Love-Its?
Yeah.
Should we do Could Be Betters first?
Sure, so we can end on a high note, because we're already sort of in there.
Yeah. Let's do Could Be Betters. I already mentioned a bunch of mine. My last ones for Could Be Betters are, I would really like to see I'd like to see more ways to resource manage that aren't as time consuming. This could be like the travel problem, but if I need 50 mushrooms, it's really weird to me that I can't plant mushrooms. It's really weird to me that I can't. It's cool to me too, right? Like,
there should be nothing that grows that you can't just cultivate, is what you're trying to think of.
yeah, stuff like that is interesting to me. It's interesting to me that I can plant every kind of tree, but fine wood is like another example of this.
Yeah.
Where it's like I promise you can plant an oak tree in real life, fam. Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that like changing this mechanic, maybe you can't do it. Maybe you don't discover an oak seed until a certain point in the game or something, and there's still a level of a barrier to entry to those things.
Sure.
But those parts do frustrate me. And the thing is they only frustrate me in the end game, right? Like the discovery part, I really like. I really like that you force me to go out and adventure and find these things. I like that. But once I've done that, once I've gone way past that, it's annoying to have to go backwards.
I do think, however, that is part of this like absolutely nothing is given to you lifestyle that Valheim is promoting in the game.
Yeah, except that humanity broke the system a long time ago, and
well, that I think brings up the other thing that the game could be better at is it could have more NPCs. There are 2. I thought of another one recently, and it's the
vendor.
Yeah, the vendor, and like the vendor like exists, should have a story, should have more to him.
No, I agree. I think
should be from somewhere.
The vendor is a huge could be better in this game, but I actually I'm told that is already in the plans.
I'm sure.
Like we don't know what that means, but like how much
the vendor
amber and pearls and crap do you have that you're waiting to spend on the vendor?
Yeah, absolutely. But the vendor, like, I mean, this game's still at such an early stage, right? They like the moment they had the systems in place, they let us go on this game. And so like, there's a lot of things that they can't prioritize until they've built everything into the game, because like these are like last moment finishing touch, like scripted style things, and those are like way less of what the game's about than the like random generated world.
Let's let you go off. I'm sure that I'll remember could be betters later, but I'd like to let you go off before we go into Levitts.
I think that the boat system is way too realistic. I want it to be a lot more like I'm driving a speedboat than it is I'm driving a sailing ship. I mostly I want to just turn better and maintain momentum in the water.
Fun fact: I've actually went from hating it to loving it in the last 2 months.
No, I have no problem with it. I think it's a great system. I just I constantly feel disadvantaged in it because it's just real sailing in a lot of ways.
It's almost like once you beat Motor, you wish that you just had a motorboat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's fair.
4 minutes at a time isn't enough.
It's really not though. Like you have so much ocean to traverse through at times that 4 minutes is just not close.
It's the reason to have 20 friends instead of 2. That's probably the thing that the game should be better at, is like I should know better ways. Like I should have better ways of like trying to figure out how to be with a bunch of people in this game. And it's got a matchmaking, or not a matchmaking system, but it's got a like rooms you can join system and stuff. But like I wonder what it's really like to be on like a busy server of this game.
Yeah, I've been on a pretty busy server of this game for what it's worth, but I was pretty far behind. I do plan on fixing that for what it's worth. If you're listening to this podcast, I was going to get into it at the end of it, but I'll just talk about this now. Yeah, I'm going to do Valheim Days once a month in the He's a Game Media Discord. Wes, you're obviously always invited. But helping people learn the game, I think that it would help me make it one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Any other could be verse before we move on to Levitts? We kind of cover them throughout the episode.
Yeah, this game is hard for me to approach with like a could be better, because like when I want to see improvements in things, right? Like I'm not actually going to focus on like what it is the game is doing that I find frustrating, right? It's what is the game doing that I'm having fun, right? Like, and that's what Valheim is building right now and needs to keep building, right? Like most of what Valheim itself is an enjoyable experience, and all they really need to do is find the parts of it that we like the most and just play on those cards, and that's what it's doing.
Let's actually move on to love it. I'll go first on this one. My biggest love in this game is the realism. You know, any time that I jump far enough where I feel like I would get hurt, my character
Yeah.
gets hurt. You know,
Sure.
building my first fireplace without a chimney and smoking myself out and literally dying
Yeah.
was great. Fishing kind of being tedious and something that you probably need a beer to start doing.
Yes, absolutely.
Was pretty great. I actually love fishing now. Like, as like I'm watching a YouTube video and fishing in Valheim is like actually a thing that I'll do. Wes will often log in and there's just 20 fish sitting in our chests where I've just been watching Smash videos. And
that'll be sweet.
yeah, I mean it's happened. I mean, where do you think these fish wraps come from, man?
I don't eat them.
You just show up and there's 40 fish wraps.
I basically I know where the locksmeat pies come from, and so that's the fancy food I eat, and everything else I mostly stay to.
Oh man, if you think that those locksmith pies are coming from you, you are sadly mistaken because I am eating them.
I know those ones. I know I'm not necessarily providing those ones, but I know how to provide those ones.
Oh sure. I was like, bro, no, I'm all that expensive food is coming from.
I know you're the one who's doing all the work for all the things. I just get to hop on and enjoy. I understand.
No, but it's actually a huge level for me. Like the realism in this game is crazy. I'm not gonna steal West's, but I've made a point in my new server for my new character to play at like the maximum level of graphics, and it's really interesting compared to the hunter gatherer that I do in my other game where I play basically zero vegetation.
I need to go look at what that looks like because I have no idea what you're looking at when you're playing Valheim because I've never turned my graphics down a hint.
Oh, I just turn off. For what it's worth, if you're, it was a tip given to me because I like was so frustrated with like finding mushrooms and basically the only thing you can freaking find with full vegetation is thistle.
I don't have issues with that. I can see most of it.
Well, turn it off and you will just actually.
Oh, I'm sure, but like I've never felt like I've missed a lot of stuff running.
You do. You miss so much. I promise you. You're like thinking you're not missing anything, but you like turn off. You turn vegetation quality. We'll get into some tips and tricks. But no, my other love it after realism is the. It's funny. People complain about this game's linear nature, but I actually think it's one of its strengths.
Yeah.
Like there was not a moment between when I built my first house to when, even right now, like I have not beaten the 6th boss yet, and all I want to do is get West and I to jump on this giant plains that we found and find the 6th boss. Like
yeah,
I think it's a huge love it. I think the linear system is actually good because there's so much to do between. We happen to have cheated a little bit by me having a bronze sword or whatever it was early.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, I think that it's actually great.
Yeah, the game is just a delightful. It looks delightful. It feels delightful. It's so easy to make things in the game that delight you yourself. Right, like the game is really the friends we made along the way, and so I've just loved every minute of Valheim because like it's all about like, you know, what am I going to be able to create that shows off to people or that just looks good enough that I'm happy just sitting here spending minutes of game time just looking at things.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's awesome.
Wes, you've actually kind of started on your Lovets already, but I want to give you time to go over any that we haven't covered.
Sure. I mean, I think that it's one of those things where like I love so many things in this game that it's like it would be hard to be exhaustive. But I love the way that like the 16 orientations of building actually do produce curved things when you do it right. I love the way that you know, you can hear deer when you're walking around the forest trying to hunt them. It's the game is just very immersive at times, and it's
You
really
can't
fun
when you're
because of that.
sneaking, by the way, just so you know, because they don't see you.
Yes. It's always wild when you just hear that, like, oh, I spooked a deer I didn't see sound. But the game is sweet. I love how different points in our play have felt. I like hitting things with my big stick. I love getting a death skeeto before it hurts me.
It's funny because if we had done this like probably right before you logged in, like I remember the first death skeeto I ever saw killed me in one hit, fully leveled, fully armored. Didn't see it. I just died.
Yeah.
And that was with I was wearing wolf armor at the time, but I had friends dying in padded armor, dying to death skeetos before they nerfed them.
I mean, they did seem real scary in their beginning days, but they're still, like a heavy nuisance. Like,
oh yeah, if you have,
them.
We had 3 death skeetos the other day that were attacking us while goblins were attacking us, and it's funny because like the death skeetos die instantly once you hit them.
Yeah.
So, but like it was like, okay, well I actually can't fight these goblins until these death skeetos are gone. Yeah. Because they will just take so much health that the goblins will easily be able to kill me. That is actually a love it for me, whereas it would have been a could be better for me before.
Yeah, I think the game, like, when combat feels like hard but manageable in this game, it always is an awesome like situation. It's actually like kind of the right mix of like sometimes you're just like running your enemies around in circles, like you're out on the plains in Assassin's Creed or whatever, and sometimes you're up in close and you have to close because you can't afford to take more hits or whatever. Like it's fun.
Let's rapid fire tips and tricks before we wrap up, West. I'll go first. The first thing is find a level 1 boar. This will always produce 2 meat, which will equal 1 turnip equals 2 meat. It will be the number one thing that you can do to produce meat without having to go deer hunting. Deer hunting will be the second most efficient way that you can get meat in the game to start. Also, care about renewable resources or resources that are quote-unquote infinite, whether that is queen bees, whether that is late game. It's funny because people really think that bread is inefficient. I do not feel that way. I do not possibly eat bread fast.
It's easy to plant. It's easy to harvest. It's
anyone who says that bread is inefficient is crazy. It does not take that long to plant barley, and also barley cares the least about how close it is to the next barley.
Well, even better, it's just that like it's the size of it is like the footprint of all the other plants. So like it just has the same like proximity issues. It's just you can actually see it. Yeah, so like you just know as long as they're not on top of each other, we're good.
Yeah, so the infinite food sources that you have are bread, turnip stew, honey, and there's one more.
I mean carrots.
I mean, I guess technically you could say, you could say carrots,
mushrooms, but
carrots and meat would be the other ones. Just straight up eating carrots, eating cooked meat would be the other ones. But like caring about that type of stuff is like pretty important. It'll using honey early, caring about honey early will just allow you to constantly be regenerating health no matter what you're doing, because the health regen on honey is so good. The next thing I would say is build your first base with a rock inside of it to just do training when you're doing other stuff. You can do all of your combat training and running against a rock. And then right next to that, if you are building a base that needs pillars to hold up the structure, inside of those pillars, you can just quickly put a wood floor low enough that you can just hit the jump button and do that. You build yourself a quick dojo already that way. Tons of leveling can happen really quickly. My newest character already has a higher jump level than my than the character that I have been jumping with nonstop since I started the game. That is how fast you can level that up.
Sure, that's awesome.
Other than food and leveling, my other tips and tricks are marking things is pretty important. Whether it is, if you see like, I hear people say like, if I see 2+ of berries or mushrooms or whatever, mine is like 3 berry bushes, 5+ mushrooms, 3+ thistle. figure out like how much do I need it to be worth it to go to the spot, and actually mark those things too. You'll pretty often mark dungeons that you have or haven't finished. You'll pretty quickly mark copper, not tin because tin's so easy to get, but like copper.
I wonder if there's like the oceanless seed that someone gets in this game, where like there's just like no water anywhere.
Dude, you should see the seed I have right now on my single player game. It's nuts. Like the first thing you see is this huge river that is like really deep down. It's crazy. Anyway, the last tip and trick that I would do is if you're really worried about getting a bad seed, I think that Wes and I have maybe the worst seed that ever has existed in Valheim, in the Heezy world. You can actually just find like this is a good beginner seed on Reddit and actually just load in that seed.
Yeah.
What about you? You have way better tips and tricks than me for what it's worth.
My tips and tricks are all in the building world, but the first thing I would say is that with leveling ground, the two pieces of leveling ground are the pick and the hoe, and when you are using the hoe and you're lowering the level of ground, it's lowering to where you're at. So ground you've already leveled, if you're standing on that ground, you can level it all out evenly. But if you're like going backwards as you're leveling, it's going to be still really bumpy.
Can I give Wes a tip that he might not know? If you are not holding shift while using the hoe, it levels to your feet. If you are holding shift, it levels to where the thing is pointed.
Interesting.
So if I'm leveling ground and it's lower than where my feet are, if I hold shift, it will level the ground to where my hoe is pointed. If I'm not holding shift, it will level to where my feet are.
Yeah, I was just always gonna. I didn't know that, but that's
yeah.
That makes it a little bit easier to use. I don't know if I would actually use that all that much.
So it is specifically good when you are trying to trying to move quickly and you're trying to like make maybe whether you're making steps or whether you're doing other stuff with the hoe.
Maybe that makes sense. I think that when you're building things like keep in mind that you have like that full 16 points of orientation, and you can make curves by just putting a bunch of things just a little bit off to the side of each other, and like you can fill up floors by overlapping pieces on top of each other. It's not pretty, but it works. When building with stone, there's...
Can we rewind to what you just said on the curves though? Because yeah. I think spiral staircases actually save a substantial amount of space to regular staircases, where you actually, because staircases, if you build ladders, this doesn't matter, but ladders kind of suck to use in the game. They actually use a lot of stamina. Whereas
they're a pain in the butt.
If you actually build spiral staircases, you actually save space, and stamina that you wouldn't have had otherwise, and they actually cost the same amount of wood,
which is sweet. But yeah, the game is like there's it's all about finding those tips and tricks. I think there are a lot of people better than us on the internet that you can go get some tips and tricks from.
That was going to be my last one, was just go look up videos.
Yeah.
Like I sent West this infinite pig video literally 24 hours ago. I was like, I'm going to ask West to build us one of these because he's way better building than me. It's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's tons of tips and tricks. This game's sweet, West. Anything you want to say about it before we wrap up?
Come play with us.
Yeah, let's do that.
That's what we have to say is come to our Discord, come find out when we're going to do our next monthly playtime, and come join us for this.
Yeah, I'm happy to either do a brand new character. I'll probably put a straw poll in the Discord that says like, hey, do you want to come to the world that Wes and I have created? Do you want us to create a new world with you? And, come check it out.
Yeah.
I'm down for anything, so. You can find me at SpencerH. You can find West at East_monotone. How do you spell that, West? Well, I gotta put that back on I switched computers. This actually used to be on the video. I gotta fix it so that it's on the video again. But how do you spell your Twitter handle?
EAST_. MONOTONNE.
You can find the show at Need to Nerd Pod. You can follow the entire network at Easy Game Media. That's going to give you Magic the Gathering content. When we will probably have to do a special Patreon only episode that was released to nobody because I have to talk about the fact that I'm going to be a Danny Phantom main somewhere, and there just won't be time in the release schedule. But the second that the Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl game was announced, I was like, dude, I almost want to cancel the Valheim podcast. We have to talk about this.
There's not enough to go on right now. I don't.
Oh, there's so much. I could talk about so much already. Patrick Star is the K. Rool of this game. I'm already calling it.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I can sit still for this conversation. This already sounds like something that I'm going to be like, I won't know until I have my hands on it.
If you love this, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's super helpful. The most helpful thing you can do, even over going to Patreon, is just leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you can. You can't leave one on Spotify, but if you can leave a review for the show, please do so. If you can comment here on the YouTube video, we have YouTube videos that get thousands of views. If you just leave a comment, it's going to help us so much. It means the world to us.
Yeah.
With that being said, Wes, next week. So literally, you have to come over this weekend. You have to come over.
I know. We have to figure out between our busy pre-release schedule.
Yeah. You got to come over because next week we are talking about one of the greatest romantic comedies of all time. We are talking about Hitch. We have Paul Blart Mall Cop and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air coming together to give love to the world in Hitch. West, I want to just really quickly, you said something that meant a lot to me, which is that I was 2 for 2 on movie reviews for you in the podcast.
Would you like me to say it out of my own mouth?
Sure, go for it.
I trust your movie recommendations now, Spencer, because I very much enjoyed the ones you've shown me.
This will enter. I don't even care what your top 3 romantic comedies of all time are.
I don't know what my top 3 romantic comedies of all time are.
This will be your golden standard.
Okay.
That it is the golden standard of romantic comedies.
Is That Thing You Do not a romantic comedy?
Ooh, that one's a hard one. It's kind of one, but like the romance is so small, it's hard to call it that.
Yeah, it's kind of just the way that movies had to end in that era.
Yeah, exactly. So it's hard. But we will be talking about Hitch next week. If you haven't watched that movie, oh man, I usually give out how to watch this. I believe it's on Peacock. But there's probably a free way to watch it. And you should watch it before our next episode. Thank you everybody so much for listening. We'll see y'all next week with another episode of the Need to Nerd podcast.
Summit, but between games they're all hanging out in their Valheim house.
Yeah.